Your headlines this hour. The UK begins mass vaccinations against COVID-19. A 90-year-old grandma getting that first ever Pfizer shot. The latest with London correspondent Benedict Pavio coming up. Less progress, though, on Brexit talks, just 3.5 weeks before the UK leaves the single market. Boris Johnson and the EU's Ursula von der Leyen sitting down today to try and break the deadlock. And the Charlie Hebdo trial continues in France. 14 suspects being tried for their links to the brutal attacks in January 2015 at the satirical magazine and other sites around Paris. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeannie Godula. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get straight to our top story in the UK, where a 90-year-old woman has become the first person in the world to get the Pfizer vaccine outside of a trial. Margaret Keenan got that jab just 6 days after the UK gave it rapid clinical approval. British health authorities began rolling out the first doses of the vaccine this morning. And to get the very latest on how that's all going, let's bring in our London correspondent, Benedict Pavio. Benedict.
Yes, so here we are at St Thomas's. You'll remember that the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was here several months ago and he became very, very ill. He ended up in intensive care unit, and that was with COVID-19. There is some speculation that he may have had a jab, so we're going to watch out and to find out about that. But Margaret Keenan, the 19-year-old grandmother, says she feels privileged. It's the best early birthday present that she could have had. And she, like many thousands and indeed across the world, millions of people, has now that hope that she can now will see in a few weeks' time her friends and her family. So many people have been isolated and had to confine themselves because of whether it's government measures, and of course we've had lockdowns, we've had confinements, and there are still very strict measures. We're here in Tier 2 here in London, in the British capital. The second person who has had a jab, I understand, is a man called William Shakespeare. So I give that to you. So the hope is that really this jab is going to turn around the tide in the battle against coronavirus. 61,500 people have already died here in the UK from COVID-19. So there is huge hope. And the way it's administered is that you get 2 jabs. So Margaret Keenan will in 3 weeks' time get her second dose. There are 800,000 vaccines that have already been transported, this Pfizer-BioNTech German-American jab that has come over, made in Belgium, made it through the Eurotunnel, interestingly transported in unmarked vans very secretly, and the logistics are very complex. It's the biggest mass vaccination program that the UK has ever undertaken. I am here in the British capital in London in England, but the 3 other nations are also have begun vaccinating people, so in Northern Ireland, in Scotland and in Wales today. What is important to underline is we don't yet know whether it protects the person themselves, but we don't know if you can still transmit the virus. So it is really important that people, says Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, respect social distancing, wearing face coverings, masks, and wash their hands frequently. So yes, welcome to what is V-Day, Vaccine Day here in the UK.
It does sound encouraging, Benedict, and it does come as things there in the UK are actually getting worse when it comes to COVID. Tell us about that.
Yes, the number of infections across the United Kingdom is about 15,000 a day. Now, we have had higher, and what was noticeable is that when people were absolutely yearning to go on holiday, we had that peak again. So we've had, over the last 2 to 3 months, that introduction of that tier system with very strict measures, and I was alluding it to. Of course, back in the spring, we had the total lockdown. And of course, beyond the health damage and the grievance, people grieving across the country as they are across the world, that incredible economic damage that we already know about. Restaurants, the hospitality industry, the aviation industry, all of that. And of course, here in the United Kingdom, there is this, are we going to get a Brexit deal or no Brexit deal? And the link with the COVID-19 vaccine is interesting because Of course, contingency planning, as we don't know if there's going to be a deal or not, that is in the hands of the Prime Minister and of 27 EU leaders, and we perhaps will know that in the next 48 hours, whether that can be done or not. The contingency planning is that it's been decided that if it's necessary, then there will be the RAF, the British military, that will actually airlift the COVID vaccine and this new Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to the United Kingdom. So, as I said, a huge rollout, but really the millions that we'll have, just 4 million before Christmas, will be actually in the new year. And then the Health Secretary I was just listening to moments ago, Matt Hancock, saying that on the back end of spring, he has great hopes for summer 2021, that life will begin very much by then to be back to normal.
Benedict, thanks for that. Let's hope that is indeed what happens. Benedict Pavio there reporting for us from London. Well, France, meanwhile, is still far from reaching its goal of reducing COVID infections to just 5,000 a day. In fact, the current numbers here are more than double that amount. France, though, hoping to lift its lockdown next week. It's already reopened non-essential shops and businesses, but with the targets still not being met, France could be facing more delays. Selena Sykes reports.
It's the day many people in France have been eagerly waiting for. On the 15th of December, the country is supposed to wind down its second national lockdown, allowing families to reunite for end-of-year festivities. But France's health chief, Jérôme Salomon, has thrown doubt on that possibility.
After a sharp drop, the decrease in the number of positive cases has been stalling for a week now. Every day, more than 10,000 people test positive, compared to 5,000 per week in the summer. We must be vigilant over this recent development, but we're far from our goal, which is to drop below 5,000 cases per day.
Reaching under 5,000 new cases per day was the condition set out by President Emmanuel Macron for lifting France's lockdown, along with fewer than 3,000 patients in intensive care units. Daily cases reported over the weekend were well above 10,000, while nearly 3,200 patients are in intensive care. The government eased some measures at the end of November, allowing non-essential shops and businesses to reopen, though bars, restaurants and gyms remain shut. The lockdown is set to be replaced by a curfew next week, which will be lifted for Christmas and New Year's Eve. Salomon said the next few days would be critical and warned that this winter will be very difficult.
Next, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen due to hold face-to-face talks in Brussels. We're now just a little over 3 weeks away from the end of the Brexit transition period, and there is still no deal in sight. Level playing fields for businesses, the governance of future disputes, and fishing rights are still the key sticking points. On that last issue, at least, France says it's going to stand firm.
We will not cave into potential British pressure. Fishing represents 6,000 jobs. It's crucial in certain French regions, the north, Brittany and Normandy. Those areas depend on that sector. There's no reason to give the sector up just because the British say it's very important for them. We can't just say, it doesn't matter, keep up blocking us from your territorial waters. We have to make efforts, reach compromises. But we will not sacrifice the sector and French fishermen.
France 24's Dave Keating's covering this story for us from Brussels. He told us more on those top-level in-person talks.
Some people are reading this as a sign of hope. Some people are reading this as a sign of despair. It's not unusual in free trade negotiations for the negotiators to do talks right up to the line and then hand it over to political leaders to do a big show of signing the agreement at the last minute. That way the leaders can claim victory for having gotten the deal across the line themselves. This doesn't quite feel like that, though, because what we're hearing from both sides is that the two sides are not right up to the line. Normally, that's when something like this would take place, but the two sides, according to both of them, remain really, really far apart on these three remaining fundamental issues of fisheries, governance, and state aid. And as long as they're that far apart, it looks more like this visit is a kind of Hail Mary pass, if you will. It's Boris Johnson coming over and thinking that he can make a difference himself. The key question is, does he think he can make a difference because he'll be able to convince Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to renege on the EU's red lines that have been agreed by all 27 prime ministers and presidents? That seems unlikely that von der Leyen even could do that. Or is he coming here because he thinks he personally can violate his own red lines in a way that his chief Brexit negotiator, David Frost, was unable or unwilling to do? That's the key thing to watch. We still don't know exactly when he's coming. It looks like it will probably be tomorrow, because on Thursday, the 27 EU prime ministers and presidents are coming here to Brussels for an in-person summit. That's really thought to be the last opportunity that they could sign off on a Brexit deal before the end of the year. And Johnson, well, number 10, is saying that he doesn't have the intention to crash that party on Thursday, if you will. I'm not sure he would be invited, since that is a summit for EU leaders. So it looks like tomorrow is probably the day that he is the man to watch here. I mean, this is all up to him now. Is he willing to compromise and violate those red lines that he set out in order to get a deal across the table? From everything we're hearing, it looks like if he did that, he can get the deal passed through the parliament with the support of the loyalists in his party and the opposition Labour Party, although there would be a pretty big revolt on the Brexiteer backbenches of his party. And the EU, it's not clear that von der Leyen could get something past the line if she agrees to violate the EU's red lines.
France 24's Dave Keating. Next, the trial of suspects from the attacks on the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo is now in its final stretch. A verdict is due to drop next week. 14 defendants are on trial linked to the brutal attacks at the magazine and several other sites around Paris in January 2015. The defendants could be facing sentences of 10 years to life. Sharon Gaffney told us more from the Paris courthouse.
This trial, of course, began in September. It was delayed by a month when the main suspect, Ali Reza Pola, tested positive for COVID-19. Now, he and 13 others are on trial in connection with the Charlie Hebdo attacks, as you say, but also a related attack on a police officer and at a Jewish supermarket back in January 2015. Now, he is seen as the main suspect in this trial. He's seen as being just the main link, actually, between the two attacks, and it's understood that he obtained the weapons that were used in them. Now, as I say, there are 14 people on trial. 3 of them are being tried in absentia. The 3 gunmen involved in the attacks were killed by security forces. So those on trial here, they're charged with complicity and supporting the gunmen in those attacks. What happened here yesterday was that the prosecuting side began summing up the evidence. That will continue here this morning. We'll also see prosecuting lawyers tell the judge what they think should happen in terms of the sentences that should be handed down if these people are convicted. They face between 10 years and life in prison. We heard yesterday as well that it was quite an emotional testimony. The prosecutors described what happened in January 15 as an attack on the multiculturalism of France. Also later today, we'll hear from the Defence Counsel. As you say, Eve, verdicts will be handed down in this trial next week.
Now, when you think of Olympic sports, you probably think of swimming, running, jumping, but how about breakdancing? Well, believe it or not, that became an official Olympic sport Monday and will feature for the very first time at the 2024 Paris Games. Surfing, skateboarding, and sports climbing were also added in a bid by the International Olympic Committee to attract a younger audience.
Mixing artistry and athleticism, breakdancing has been thrilling spectators on street corners across the world since the 1970s. It's now got the green light to perform on sport's biggest stage, a decision that many hope will give it more recognition.
It made me extremely happy, especially for the people who paved the way for my generation. I don't think there's a week that I haven't thought about Olympics for the past year. So it's been really exciting.
Breakdancing, also known as breaking, will make its debut at the 2024 Paris Games. Dance-offs will take place at a prime location at the heart of the French capital. Competitors are judged on technical skill as well as creativity and style. While most in the breaking community have embraced its inclusion, some have expressed concerns over its culture and authenticity getting lost on a bigger platform. For Richard Colon, one of the pioneers of breaking, its edition is about boosting viewing figures for the Olympics.
We've already legitimized ourselves, so we're not looking to the Olympics for legitimacy. The thing is that I can only hope that we bring some more interest to the Olympics. I think it's really the other way around. What is breaking going to do for the Olympics?
An estimated 1 million people practice breakdancing across the world. Surfing, skateboarding and sports climbing have also been added to the Olympics programme in a bid to attract younger viewers.
Looking forward to seeing that at the 2024 Olympic Games here in Paris. That wraps it up for this edition. Thanks for watching. Stay with us. There is a lot more to come.